Okay, everybody, welcome. This is the annual setting of the rates special council meeting. Agenda item 1 is apologies.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly and Councillor Podrigan Kelly.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
And Seamus Green is running about half an hour late.
Okay, well, we'll be finished before you get to it. Councillor Warrington.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alan Rainey and Councillor Robert Irvine a half an hour ago was an hour and a half away from access to a computer or from home, so we'll play that one by ear.
Thank you, Victor. Councillor Paul Robinson.
Councillor Hawkes and Councillor Mackin, I think, is coming online. Councillor Elliott's online and Councillor Thompson's online.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Apology for a moment.
Sorry?
Councillor Mackin doesn't come on.
He is on. He's on here now. Okay, thank you, Paul. Next we go to Councillor Adam Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe it's an Ernest thing tonight, but Councillor Phillips is just running a bit late and he should be joining us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
Yeah, Councillor Riff should be here from work in about 2 or 3 minutes, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Deacon's online, so thank you very much, everybody. Obviously, this is the rates, so declarations of interest is the next item on the agenda. I'm going to scan quickly. And there's no declarations of interest at this stage. So finally, we get to the item 3, which is to consider estimates for the year 2025 to 2026. I'll ask for certain actions to be taken after each paper is heard and questions are clarified. So item 3.1, and we go to 3. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Members, good evening. So we're here this evening for the estimates process, the budget setting process for 25-26. As you'll see in your meeting pack, there are 4 areas that we wish to cover here this evening. The first area is the estimates, the budget for the year ahead. The key components of the budget, we'll cover that, how it breaks down, the key considerations that we have taken into account in determining the budget for both the revenue and capital expenditure for the incoming year. And I'm going to cover that paper. It's important we consider the medium and longer term impacts of any budget making decisions that we take here tonight and ensure that we maintain very robust financial management arrangements in terms of the medium to long term. So we look at the long term capital plan and the capital strategy, the affordability of any borrowings that we have, and our key financial indicators, our KPIs, and our head of finance, Catherine, will look at that. The Chief Executive is the Chief Financial Officer, and she has a particular scrutiny and oversight role in regards to the estimates in the budget, the robustness of the budget, identifying any key risks and uncertainties. So that's paper C, and Alison will cover that. And then it will all be brought together in the final paper, paper D, the actual striking of the rate. And as the Chair has indicated, for the budget setting process, the estimates, and for the medium term plans, we will note the recommendations as we work through, and they will come together in the final recommendations of the setting at the rate towards the end. So in relation to the estimates for tonight and the budget, in accordance with the Local Government Finance Act, which members will be aware, there is a requirement before the 15th of February each year to consider the estimates and to fix a rate for the next financial year for the amount estimated to be required by means of the district rate. As you'll be aware, and as we outlined in our workshops, the rates process is first and foremost a political process where we seek to align the key decisions on services for our district with the budget that we have in place. It is a management process where we seek to assurance on the adequacy of the budget that we need to deliver those services. And absolutely, it's a financial process in terms of the overall management and propriety of arrangements. Elected member workshops were held on 2 occasions, one in November and one in January, to review in detail the estimates process to prepare us for the budget that we're presenting here this evening. And in those workshops, we looked at the estimated revenue income and expenditure required to fund council services, the proposed capital plan for the incoming year 25-26 and the funding of that plan, the reserves position for the council, the position in relation to central government funding, the rates base and any changes there and the estimated penny product. And we looked at the risks, the uncertainties and the assumptions that we were considering in terms of the development of the estimates process. And that led us to develop the proposed budget, members, which is presented here this evening at Appendix 1A, with a breakdown of the spend across the different areas. And I propose to take you through that now in detail in terms of the contents. So if we refer to Paper A, Appendix 1, which is the report of the estimates of income and expenditure, we see an outline of the objectives of the rates process, really to develop a budget to support the aims and objectives of the community plan that we have for the district, and also the 4-year corporate plan, the new plan which is established last year. And we incorporate within that process members' views on service delivery and capital priorities, and key within that is the timing of those priorities and service delivery. We look at future costs, we look at assumption, we look at any new incoming legislation or changes in legislation, and we also take account of external cost pressures. So the overall aim of the rates process is to meet our requirements to ensure that there is adequate funding in place to support the council's plans and priorities, while assuring that an affordable rate is levied to the ratepayer. And importantly, we need to note that to ensure financial propriety, no expenditure shall be incurred by or on behalf of the council unless it is previously authorised within the estimates that are approved by the council or in an emergency situation. So if we go to consider the detail of the revenue budget, so when we consider the estimates for 25-26, we look at revenue and we look at capital. So if we focus firstly on the revenue budget and the estimates for that, I suppose the context within setting the revenue budget is the economic environment which we currently operate and the pressures that that places on our service delivery and capital plans. So we look in particular at pressures around external funding for some of the provision of some council services, ongoing cost pressures increasing, uncertainty around inflation rates, interest rates and the external market, and also in the context that there is a requirement to undertake within the council a strategic review of policy and plans to deliver improved services in a cost-effective way. And really the context of that, or a key consideration, is the full utilisation of the council's COVID reserve, which in the short to medium term, as you'll be aware, has been used to offset really the more recent in the past number of years impact of high inflation and cost of living costs on the council, and also take account of proposed capital investments in the district going forward in the medium term and the potential for the need to borrow. It's important to note that for the estimates we're proposing tonight, there are no new borrowings proposed for next year for that capital plan. So the summary position in terms of the revenue budget, so the total net revenue costs for 25-26 is proposed at £45.4 million, in comparison to £44.3 million in 24-25 last year, which is a difference of £1 million or 2.6%. So in formulating the budget, the estimates, the key themes and actions of the community plan were considered, the capital expenditure programme and including the use of council reserves, input from directors, heads of services and lead officers in terms of the adequacy of the budget and proper arrangements in place, really to ensure value for money in terms of service delivery. Cost increases, an estimate of increases in income based on levels of usage of facilities, things like our leisure facilities, our tourism facilities, and what we anticipate usage from our residents and income from those facilities will be. Consideration of employee costs, staff costs, with estimates of future pay awards. And also within the key consideration is the rate space itself, and the ability of that rate space to generate the funding needed to run council services. We consider central government funding, and we also consider the COVID-19 reserve. So these have been taken into consideration, and we have reviewed the detailed budgets. Officers from the council have been working on this process really for a period of over 6 months in terms of looking at detail at the budgets at each service areas, and have identified at this stage operational efficiency savings in the region of £1.3 million. So officers are continually being challenged to identify efficiency savings while maintaining high levels of service. So you'll see in Table 1 on page 4 the breakdown of the net budget by cost type in terms of salaries and wages, operating costs, utility costs and income, and the variance in comparison with the budgets from previous years. And I propose to take you through each of those 4 elements to outline the key aspects. Salaries and wages costs, it's estimated, will be £35.8 million for this year, an increase of £1.7 million. In terms of the considerations determining that budget, key factors is an estimate of the potential national pay award, and we've included a value of 2.5% in the estimates for next year, which has been offset by a reduction of 0.5% to account for vacancy control throughout the year, which may take place. A significant impact on employment costs, as you'll be aware, members, and it has been discussed at previous meetings, is increases in employer national insurance costs, which will contribute an additional £710,000 to the budget as per our estimates. In terms of staffing numbers, the estimates are based on a projection of staffing numbers at a similar level to current year. The staffing complement was 709 employees as per our annual counts at the end of 23-24, and we propose that the estimates assume that those staffing levels remain constant, but throughout the year we will have continual review of service delivery to identify any efficiencies. So that is our staffing costs. In terms of our operating and utility costs, the estimates include operating costs of £23.2 million, which is an increase of £2.4 million. It's important to note that that is largely attributable to additional funding that we've obtained through a number of schemes which I'll outline, which is paid into the council and then is used to deliver directly against services. And you'll be able to see in Table 4 that additional increase in operating costs is offset by an additional increase in income, and that's how it's aligned. So in terms of additional aspects, in terms of the operating costs, there is the sub-regional economic plan, which is very positive for the region. It allows us to identify and spend money on our own economic priorities within the district. So there's an additional income of £1.4 million, which will be spent out to deliver that service. The operating costs include an estimate of £1.1 million of spend linked to funding through the Peace Plus programme, again, highly beneficial for the region, and which will be spent out to deliver peace and other aligned programmes within the region. The budget takes account of £300,000 operating expenditure on the Mid-South West growth deal and reflects the very positive news for the region of the signing of the heads of terms, which will be a stepping stone along the way to unlocking really very major capital plan investment for the region. The costs reflect waste costs aligned with the closure of the council's landfill site and Drumee and the level of waste disposed of, and estimates around the tonnages of that waste, which will fluctuate and we'll not know really the final tonnages and the cost per tonne towards the end of the year. So those are estimated costs. The operating costs include. So the operating costs include so just have a little echo, yeah.
David, you need to turn the noise off in your laptop. You need to turn the sound off.
Yeah, but it's sound on.
It's okay, you're muted now, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the operating costs also reflect notification that we've recently had from DERA on an additional £2.521 million of income associated with the extended producer responsibility obligations. This funding is linked very much to waste regulations, and it's planned that it will be included in the Council's capital plan as funding towards our waste transformation project. There is assumption in the operating costs that the Fermanagh Lakeland Forum Leisure Centre will close during the incoming year 25-26. However, this closure is subject to consideration by the Council of the full business case for this project, and the budget can be reviewed in year to ensure provision is available for that project. The operational costs include utility costs of £2.2 million, which is a reduction from £2.8 million for the 24-25 year, a decrease of £600,000, mainly attributable to the reduction in electricity costs and additional lower unit usages from the previous year. The budget also takes account a reduction in the revenue budget of £200,000 for capital grants. And this is really a realignment of funding you will see as we come on later. The capital programme includes new expenditure of £5 million on community capital grants over the next 5 years, and that funding has really been realigned within there. And some other changes in other operational areas of the council in terms of off-street car parking. The operational budget also takes account of a potential estimated increase in members' allowance of £400,000, which may be directed by the Department for the Communities as part of its current review of councillor roles and responsibilities. So that's really a summary of the operating costs. When we look then at the position regarding income for the forthcoming year, we're projecting service income of £15.8 million, which is an increase of £2.3 million in relation to the previous year. And this is really new grant funding to deliver services as I outlined previously. In terms of additional income from other areas, we're assuming a steady level of demand for planning and building control services. However, there are indications of new large-scale future developments within the district which have a potential positive impact should they proceed. We haven't included the income from those at this stage, but that can be included in year if those come to fruition. In terms of income, there's an assumption of a pricing increase of 2% across the various services within the council, with the exception of leisure services, which have been held at their current rates due to the largely positive impact of the change in VAT legislation within that area. And there is also additional income projected through bank investment rates. In terms of income, there are a number of central government grants also awarded to the council each year for specific areas of delivery, including the policing and community safety, community development and advice services, good relations programmes, sports development funding for healthy towns and active living. And these grants range from in the region of £50,000 to large grants of £1.2 million, with a total amount of grant funding of £5.6 million in this area, which is an increase of £2.3 million from the previous year. Also, it's important to note in relation to income that the council has established an elected member income generation working group, which meets quarterly, and this is really to look at a strategic level at new and innovative ways of income generation and take forward opportunities for the council in this regard. So that's really the four components of the budget and how it breaks down across each of those areas. The next section in the paper looks at operational service delivery, and I don't propose to go through this on a granular basis. It looks at the breakdown of the income and expenditure across each of the council's service areas and directed areas: community and wellbeing, corporate services and governance, environment and place, and regeneration and planning. And a summary of the breakdown of the net budget across each of those areas is included in Table 2 of the Appendix 1 of Paper A. And you can see the breakdown and the changes and the variance from the previous year. If we refer back to Appendix 1A, the actual budget sheet, you will then be able to cross-reference between those service areas and the service area breakdown for the proposed budget in the high-level one-page overview of the budget summary. So that's that aspect of the estimates for 25-26. If we then move on to look at the capital investment and the capital plan for 25-26. So the capital plan outlines a total proposed estimate capital spend of 31.25 million for the incoming year, which is subject to business case approval for a number of individual capital projects, as members will be aware. The capital plan, very positively, is subject to the receipt of external funding of £22.7 million and other financing arrangements, including the use of existing reserves. So the key priorities within the capital plan include £25.4 million of projects, which are expected to attract the external funding of 22.7 million and include future waste management projects, Department of the Community's funded projects for Omagh Town regeneration to the value of £1.1 million, local Peace Plus projects to the value of £1.65 million, the commencement of spend on Mid-South West growth deal projects, the capital aspect of those projects of £1.5 million, expenditure on the Fan or Lakeland Forum, which is subject to business case approval, and which, if approved, will secure the levelling of funding of £20 million for that project. And there are other proposed projects, as detailed in the paper, to a value of £5.9 million, subject to funding from council resources, and the details of those are included in the paper. So, Table 3 presents a summary of the estimated capital spending and funding for 25-26 and a breakdown of the projects which are subject to external funding, the council-funded projects and the general allocations to support work in year. And that is supported by Appendix 1B, which outlines each of those capital projects and how they're broken down. The capital projects over a longer term period of 5 years is considered further. Catherine will cover that information as part of the Council's medium-term financial plan. So if we move then on to the financing of the capital expenditure, and you will see this again outlined on Appendix 1A in the one-page summary of the budget, and there are three components within this. The total revenue costs of delivering the capital plan for 25-26 is estimated at £3 million. And that includes a minimum revenue provision of £1.3 million, direct funding directly for the capital expenditure of £700,000 and £1 million for future capital plan development. And you will see that outlined again in the first column of the budget sheet. Moving then on to the use of reserves in relation to the budget. So the council is required to maintain a general reserve to meet any ongoing fluctuations and costs related to normal service delivery. And that's very important for our financial governance, for our stewardship, for the stability of the council in terms of the short, the medium and the long term. And the adequacy of this reserve is specifically covered by the Chief Financial Officer, the Chief Executive, and reported separately as Paper C. And in order to plan for this and other future expenditure, the Council has the power to establish a number of reserve funds and make transfers from those reserves on an annual basis. So the net position for reserve transfers for 25-26 is £550,000 as detailed again in Appendix 1A. This includes a transfer of £500,000 from the COVID contingency reserve to support the revenue budget and transfers to the capital reserve of just over £1 million. You will note in the paper there is specific mention of the COVID and contingency and resilience reserve. In the short to medium term, that reserve will be depleted. So we're estimating that by the end of next year, 26-27, that COVID reserve will be used within the general accounts. And that emphasises the need for us to focus on service delivery and to offset any potential benefit that was received from that reserve. Moving on, then, we consider the central government support grants. So as you'll be aware, there are a number of support grants come from central government. We have the rate support grant, the de-rating grant, and the transferred function grant. And there is consideration in relation to the position for all those three particular central government grants. So the total central government support is estimated to be £3,525,000, which is a decrease of 1%, £44,000 from the previous year. The rate support grant, as members will be aware, has been decreasing over a number of years, and it is a particularly important grant for this council region because we are a region where the wealth and needs of this area are less in comparison to other council regions. So this is something that is important to us as a region. We have not been formally advised on the budget available for the rate support grant, and therefore we are unable to predict this figure accurately at this stage. But we are aware that the total rate support grant for 24-25 was £3.1 million, and this was a reduction of 36% compared to the previous year's allocation. There is a lot of work being done at a collaborative level to try and stabilise that and ensure that that funding is not depleted any further. So this year, the estimates for this year include an estimated amount of £150,000 for the rate support grant. The de-rating grant is, in terms of some central government grant that we receive to offset the reductions in rates that are offered to organisations directly from central government, industrial organisations, freight and transport, and that comes directly from central government to offset those rates, and that's included within the grant income. And then we also have the transferred functions grant to cover functions within the council that came into play within our organisation as a result of the review of public administration. Moving towards the end, then, members, we consider the rate space itself and the estimated penny product. So that's the value of the council's rate space in terms of the district and any changes which have impacted and affected in that area. And these are the assumptions of the rates available from both the domestic and the non-domestic sector. We've worked with LPS to prepare 2 iterations of the estimated penny product calculation based on a number of planning assumptions, and the final data being calculated in the rating systems at the 31st of October. So this is our best and our most accurate estimate within that. There is a positive outcome in that the estimated penny product, the value of the rate space, has increased by 1.52% from the previous year and is now sitting at £1.713 million. So finally, members, if we move to bring that all together and the impact of that, what that means. So in order to arrive at the district rate, the total cost of both the revenue estimates is combined with the costs of financing the council capital plan, the transfers to and from reserves as outlined, and the central government support by way of the grants. And that is brought together in the final schedule of estimates to produce the figures outlined and proposed to you this evening. So what that means in terms of impact on the 25-26 rates bills. So based on our proposal to fund £45.455 million to the district rate, And noting that the accounting for the adjustment of the regional rate remains unknown at this stage, we are estimating that the district rate poundage on the rates bill will be 0.4382 pence, which is an increase of 3.76% on the previous year for the domestic rate, and 26.5309 pence, which is an increase again of 3.76% on the previous year for non-domestic rates. So, excluding the regional rate, which remains unknown, the increase in rates bills as a reduce of the district rate for 25-26 will be approximately £18 per annum for a domestic property with a capital value of £115,000 and an additional £48 for a non-domestic property with a net annual valuation of £5,000. So finally, to sum up, I suppose the formulation of the estimates has been undertaken really again in a period of uncertainty linked to the current external financial market, the changes and uncertainty around central government funding budgets, the one-year funding cycle and associated allocations to councils, and also uncertainty around the ability of the rates base to generate income at the estimate levels. Overall, there's an absolute continued need for the Council to retain financial stability without the intervention of reserves, and a consideration of the significant potential capital project proposals which may need result in the requirement to externally borrow in the medium to long term. Any fluctuations in any of these variables will be monitored throughout the year, and members will be aware that the Policy and Resources Committee, the monthly accounts are presented and the fluctuations are monitored and reported through. And corrective action will be taken to address any adverse variances from the estimates. At this stage, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my appreciation to all elected members who attended and contributed very strongly to the estimates workshops and who supported the estimates and rate setting processes and to the various dialogues that we've had, both as through the estimates workshops, through the party briefings and on an individual basis. And that has been very helpful, very important to identify the proposals and priorities going forward that has informed, advised the work of officers in an effective manner. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of my colleagues, directors and heads of services and fellow officers right across the council who've been working on the budget setting process for the past 6 months to ensure that there is adequate funding in place to deliver the high-level services that are required across the region. In particular, I'd like to thank the finance team, Catherine and Patricia and Kathleen, who are here this evening, who continue to work to a very high professional standard to produce the estimates and to monitor and track throughout the year. They produce a very comprehensive range of information to effectively inform the decision-making process and ensuring transparency. And their valuable work ensures that the process that we have here tonight, the estimates and the rate setting process, is evidence-based, is robust and is efficient throughout. So in relation to then the proposal to note at this stage, going back to paper A, so we're proposing that the council notes the estimates for 25-26 as advised, as revised if applicable. The council authorises the expenditure shown in the attached schedules, the transfers to and from reserves as outlined, and notes the proposals for setting the domestic and the non-domestic rate as proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jill. Very comprehensive. At this stage, unless there's questions about particular aspects of that report, I'm looking at the proposal to note. Councillor Stephen Donnelly proposing and Councillor Debbie Coyle seconding. All agreed? Thank you. Next we go to item 3.2 and this time we go to Catherine.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members and colleagues. So Jill's paper A, focused on the year to set the rates, which is 25-26. This paper then, as it's highlighted, looks at the medium-term financial plan for the council. So it's a forecast, but it does incorporate 24-25, capital plan 25-26, and then looks forward on a forecasting basis to see what the positions may look like over the next 5 years. This paper is technical in detail, members. I will go through it with yourselves, and I'm more than welcome to take any queries on it. It's fundamentally based on the legislation, which is the Local Government Finance Act, NI 2011, and with it is a suite of codes, the Prudential Code, which I will refer to, and the Treasury Management Code. So that's the basis on which the figures are presented on the reports here tonight, members. The report refers to the minimum revenue policy statement that Jill referred to in paper A, Treasury Management Statement, Prudential and Treasury indicators and their technical calculations, and we'll go through those, an affordable borrowing limit for 25-26, a capital strategy report, and forecast income and expenditure plans. Just by way of outset, members, the main objectives of those codes that I just mentioned are to ensure, within a clear framework, that capital expenditure plans and investment plans that this council may make are affordable and proportionate, that all external borrowing, when required, is within prudent and sustainable levels, and that Treasury management decisions are taken in accordance with good professional practice and in the full understanding of risks involved and how those risks can be managed at acceptable levels for the council. The plans, members, are to be looked at in the light of the overall organisational strategy of the council to ensure that decisions are made with sufficient regard to long-term financing implications and potential risks for the council. The codes that we refer to highlights that effective financial planning, options appraisal, risk management and governance processes are essential in achieving a prudential approach to capital expenditure, investment and debt. So the medium-term plan, members, sets the framework around which the council plans to use its financial resources to fund activity, to deliver its service objectives, its priority and its vision. The first element that I've referred to, members, just earlier is an updated revised capital plan for 24-25, and that's included on table 1 of page 3. And really, members, that plan has been updated to reflect the current implementation of the existing plan. So we're in February, we've just a little bit way to go between now and the end of March to take account of external funding factors and business case development. The revised plan, members, amounts to 9.9 million with grant aid of 2.4 million. And that position, if it changes, will be brought forward then as part of the annual accounts for the year end 31st of March 2025. The capital plan forecast, members, for 25 to 2030 amounts to an estimate of 133 million. That includes the proposals that Jill highlighted for 25-26, and they are detailed in paper A. The forecast and individual projects within the plan is subject to the completion of full business case options appraisals and relevant corporate strategies, which will be progressed through relevant council committees when those materialise. The plan is also on the basis and consideration and confirmation, members, of long-term funding arrangements and maximisation of any new funding arrangements should they arrive in the period, and further consideration of long-term affordability. The appraisals will need to consider council priorities and resources, together with the associated impact on future income and expenditure forecasts. The overall level of forecast investment, members, of 132 million, 100 million excluding the 25-26 plan, will require substantial financial support and the need to borrow externally. As a priority, the council will continue to pursue external funding opportunities to support proposed capital investment, thereby minimising the impact of any investment decisions on future budgets. In considering affordability of the forecast plans, the council is required to take account of all resources available and those that are estimated to be available in the future, and those are the basis on which those calculations have been presented to members this evening in terms of the potential indicators, together with the totality of its capital plans and indeed looking at future income and expenditure forecasts. Long-term affordability and the impact of funding raised through rates requires continued and further analysis. Further financial planning is required to balance the cost of service delivery with the ambitious capital forecast plans and any associated financing costs to ensure that any amount of rates income to be generated by the rates base in any particular year is prudent and sustainable and meets the council's corporate objectives. The first appendix, members, is the minimum revenue provision policy statement that is referred to within the code. And really breaking that down in its simple terms, that statement is required to account for the cost of repaying of capital expenditure costs. The budget proposed within Paper A of 1.3 million is required to meet the current financial costs of existing council loans. Appendix 1B, members, is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement for the Council, and this again is required under the Code. And it sets out the expected investment and its borrowing strategies for 25-26, linked to the Council's community plan, the Council's corporate plan, and proposed capital development plans. And it's in accordance with the CIFPA Code on Treasury Management. The strategy statement, members, manages the Council's cash flows, borrowings, investments, and associated risks. And within the statement, the consideration is required of a capital financing requirement. So what that means is, what is the Council's position and what is the likelihood of when it may need to borrow externally? Council reserves, Treasury investment, and in the forecast, members, you will note that the Council would move from a net interest earning position to a net interest cost position, subject to the medium-term plan. The plan also looks at other reserves that may become available to the Council, its borrowing strategy, and that it will only borrow when required and will not borrow in advance. And Treasury management, members, which is linked to the investments that the Council currently holds, the day-to-day banking, reviews of limits and timing of investments, periods of investment, and the use of the Council's Treasury management advisors and governance arrangements and the reporting arrangements that are brought through the Council's Policy and Resources Committee. All of which, members, require regular monitoring, reporting and approval. In terms of the CIFPA Code and Department guidance, it does require the Council to invest its Treasury funds prudently, members, to have regard firstly to security of investments, then to liquidity of investments, and only after that do we look at the rates or yields that those investments will actually make. Moving on to Appendix 1C, members, this is the more technical element. So within the code, the Council is required to review and set in place what are known as prudential and Treasury indicators. And really, those suite of indicators, members, in Appendix 1C are designed to support and record decision-making in a manner that is publicly accountable. They're not designed to be comparative performance indicators with any other council or even from one year to the next with some regard. And they have regard to service objectives, stewardship of assets, value for money, prudence, sustainability and affordability. The potential indicators cover the capital expenditure, members, within the forecasts. They cover the potential borrowing forecasts. They cover the Treasury management position and the liquidity indicators as well. Approval of these indicators, members, will ensure that the Council complies with relevant legislation and is acting prudently, and that its capital expenditure proposals are affordable and sustainable. Members, the final appendix of Appendix 1 is a capital strategy report, which is also required under the Prudential Code. And that report, members, is to demonstrate that the Council takes capital expenditure investment decisions in line with service objectives, and as referred to earlier on, takes account of stewardship, value for money, prudence, sustainability and affordability. The Code, members, recognises that in making capital investment decisions, the Council must have explicit regard to options appraisals and risk, asset management planning and strategic planning for the Council, and the achievability of future plans. The strategy, as mentioned earlier, members, covers capital investment of 133 million for the period 2025 to 2030. It gives a high-level overview of how the capital expenditure, capital financing and Treasury management activity contributes to the provision of Council services, and also an overview of how associated risk is managed and the implications for future financial sustainability, and I referenced that earlier on in relation to revenue budgets. The capital strategy is based on estimates at this stage of capital spend, estimates of interest rates where any borrowing is required, and it is subject to future Council decisions, as I mentioned earlier, yet to be taken on a number of significant proposed investment projects. It also needs to take account of funding from the rates base, central government funding, and any new external capital grant funding that may come into play. The purpose of the strategy, members, is to firmly place decisions around borrowing in the context of the overall financial position of the Council and to provide improved links between the Council's revenue and capital budgets. Decisions made this year on capital and treasury management will have financial consequences for the Council for years to come. The capital forecast highlights, members, based on the above assumptions, that external financial demands will increase over a 5-year period, along with the utilisation of the Council's capital reserves. This is based on estimates of interest rates and on Council decisions that are yet to be taken on a number of projects, along with the estimates of future revenue funding and the Council's rates base. Further consideration of affordability, including the impact on revenue costs related to investment projects, will be required. Members, I am, however, satisfied that the proposed capital programme for 25-26 is prudent, affordable and sustainable. But I do highlight that some of the projects within the longer-term capital plan are dependent on future consideration of full business cases and an individual affordability assessment. There is also, however, a continued need to review all revenue budgets to ensure they're supported by approved Council strategies and policies and that they are efficiently and effectively delivered to support Council plans, and that an optimum allocation of operating budgets and the cost of financing of approved capital investment is achieved. There is also a need, members, to focus on the Council's estate strategy to ensure the efficient, effective and sustainable use of Council estate and to dispose of any assets that are identified as surplus, which would have a very positive impact on reducing operating costs and an impact on a positive nature in terms of increasing capital receipts for Council's proposed investment. Members, the final element of the medium-term plan is a revenue forecast for a 4-year period up to 29-30. And again, members, just to really highlight, these are forecasts. Jill in paper A identified a number of assumptions and estimations that were used within 25-26 budget presented this evening, members. And that budget has been used as a baseline for the 4-year forecast. It is recognised, members, that any future revenue forecasts must take account, as I've mentioned, the rates base, optimum levels of reserves and utilisation of funds available, and the development, prioritisation, approval and delivery of future capital investment plans. The revenue forecast has been developed to support this Council in its decision-making and risk management in the event that additional unexpected financial pressures may arise to support future policy and strategic decision-making. Key assumptions in these forecasts, members, relate to an estimate of an agreed pay award from employees for the 25-26 year, estimates of inflation on service costs, efficiency reduction in service costs, the utilisation by public of Council services and facilities and the payment of those, utilisation of the COVID reserve, which, as Jill has said, will be, coming to an end in 26-27, and a reduction in capital plan development costs to minimise the impact of anticipated external borrowing costs. These assumptions over the medium term result in an overall increased rate. However, these estimations represent a forecast only and will be revisited each year as part of the individual year for rate setting and estimation processes. Members, this Council has in place a financial reserves policy which outlines the principles used to assess Council reserves, the use of the reserves and an associated reporting framework to ensure compliance with relevant legislation. Effective management of this policy, members, is one of the Council's main approaches to managing current risks and ensuring financial stability in the medium term, and it includes particular focus on the COVID reserve. Members, then, there is a requirement to undertake a review of strategic policy and plans in order to ensure the long-term financial sustainability of the Council. There's a continued need for the Council to retain financial stability with the utilisation of reserves and a consideration of the significant capital project proposals, which will result in the need to externally borrow in the medium term. This will likely include consideration, members, as well as the estate strategy, of the waste strategy, people plan, and determination of an optimum balance of service delivery linked to both capital and revenue forecast plans, whilst also, members, taking account of any climate changes or any longer-term Council priorities. Members, just conscious that there are a lot of attachments to that medium-term plan. However, subject to any queries, member, at this stage is just for noting under section 8A, the Council's medium-term financial plan 2025 to 30, the minimum revenue provision policy statement 25-26, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement 25-26, Prudential and Treasury Indicators 2025 to 2030, an affordable borrowing limit, members, of 3.6 million for 25-26, and a capital strategy report for 2025 to 2030. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Catherine. That's very, it's hard going, and you managed to get it through without any of us falling over there. So thank you. I'd like to propose somebody to propose a noting, Councillor Debbie Coyle and Councillor Roy Crawford. Councillor Ovens.
Thank you, Chair. And really, it's a point of clarification at this stage, Catherine. And I may have a few comments, Chair, after it, if that's okay. Catherine, you talked about there in your very final comments that these reports were for noting, but I'm just looking at the cover sheet for item 3.2, and it talks about the recommendation that the council approves. Are we approving now, or are we noting now, or is approval at a later stage?
The improvements later. At the moment, we're noting these, so as we have all the information, and then we can strike a rate then once we've all the information at item 4.
Okay.
So at this stage, it's all noting, and then we will adopt it then at a later stage.
Okay. If, with your permission, Chair, just because I'm very conscious, I mean, you don't really get to say very much at all within 3 minutes on striking the rate. So just a couple of quick comments on this, Chair, if it's all right. And it's particularly in relation to the capital strategy report, Catherine. And first of all, sorry, it was remiss of me. I should have thanked you and your team for this. I thought that was a very thorough and detailed presentation. I mean, Chair, in relation, and I'm not going to rehearse old arguments or anything, so don't worry about that. But I mean, I think I've said before in this chamber, it's good for the council to show a little bit of ambition, and there are things within that capital strategy plan, and that's the 5-year plan, that I really do welcome, the likes of the investment in the play parks. I mean, that's brilliant. That's the core sort of stuff that I really believe this council should be doing, and it's delivering for families and it's delivering for local ratepayers. But again, I do make the point that, the capital plan does need to be based or grounded in reality. I look at this capital plan and I see a cost of 132 million. 64 million of that's going to be borrowed. 44 million of that's going to be borrowed through external borrowing. So that's bank loans, and everyone knows the price of bank loans over the next 25 to 30 years. And there's various figures in terms of envisaged interest rates that seem to vary between 4 to 6%. And whenever previously, Chair, I raised the issue of just the costs of financing those loans. And I appreciate there's more information uploaded on Decision Time subsequently, and thanks to Jill, I suspect, for that. But whenever we look at the cost of those loans for this 5-year capital plan, that's 22 million. Now, if I've misread that figure, please, by all means, correct me, but my reading of these reports is we are going to pay £22 million of interest for the borrowing within this capital plan, and £22 million within a small council like this just seems extortionate to me. And again, Chair, I say that in the context that it's good to be ambitious, it's good to spend money on the right things, but then I look at things within the capital sort of field that I suspect the council probably isn't adequately prioritising. And I know there's a meeting coming up on Monday night or Monday evening where I'll be able to raise this, but I even think, or look at the likes of the Ardome Theatre, I mean, should be the jewel in the crown for this council in terms of the arts sector and entertainment. But I just see that, and I see a building becoming increasingly run down, more and more people sort of just raising concerns in terms of its current state of repair. And I know previously there had been money set aside to invest in that, but it would be useful just maybe from the relevant director to get a little bit of an update on that, because this capital plan we're approving tonight, I know it's for noting now, but approval later, the Ardome Theatre, it would be useful to know where exactly that sits in that. And then, Chair, finally, we're being asked to approve, note now, but approve later, a capital plan which has, and I appreciate lots of these projects, individual projects, are still subject to final business case approval, and I understand that completely. Some of these projects are more important than others in terms of scale. There's one project in particular, and everyone knows what that project is. There has been reports, we learned the other night, subsequently received to the council, and And, well, effectively, the information hasn't been shared yet. But Chair, I look at this capital plan, or the 5-year capital plan, and I see, and it's a public document, so I think
We're going to close there now,
reasonable
Mark. You've got
comment.
3 minutes.
Page 3, it talks about the Lakeland Forum cost is 54.3 million. It's separate cost, and I'll not say whether it's any more or any less. That's not the cost that was shared with the R&C committee last June. So we're being asked to approve a capital plan tonight based on a figure of 54.3 million, when we know that's not the figure. Can I just ask, in terms of procedurally and protocol, how does that stack up? Because that doesn't seem particularly relevant or sensible to do that at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I can certainly comment on the latter point. I think has been highlighted not just this evening, but in the reports. The approval is in relation to the medium-term capital plan. So it's the quantum value of the plan itself. All projects within that plan are subject to individual business case review. The business case in relation to the Lakeland Forum will be brought to members, and that will be the investment decision.
Yeah, Chair, I think the council have already taken a decision in relation to the Ardoin, and it was decided that we would hold off on works to the Ardoin. We would do the maintenance of the Ardoin in order to keep it open, in order to make it health and safety compliant, and those works are ongoing.
Thank you. So you heard the proposal to note. All in agreement? Okay, it's noted. Thank you. Next, we go to Alison as the Chief Executive, who will to part. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Specifically, Chair, this report to you is in my capacity as Chief Financial Officer, and it's on the robustness of the estimates and adequacy of reserves for the 25-26 financial year. So again, I'll just bring you through Appendix 1, which has been included with Paper C. So essentially, Chair, this report brings together the items that both Catherine and Jill have highlighted within their reports. We set out the financial assumptions, the uncertainties and risks. So narrative is provided against all of our assessments, our assumptions, and the basis then for our decision making in relation to those. They cover the employment costs, the various operational costs right across the council, our consideration of service income and grant support, the potential for new grant funding, the central government support grants, the rate space, participation at inquiries, the capital programme, and the treasury management requirements. Then at Section 2 of the paper, Chair, I set out the requirements around the robustness of the estimates, and then I conclude in terms of the opinion. And in relation to the opinion, I set out, the arrangements that we have undertaken as a council, the scrutiny that you have applied as members, our wider suite of financial regulations which governs not only this work, but our ongoing scrutiny of the estimates and management accounts on a monthly basis. I'm satisfied that all of the risks that impact upon the council and its operation have been fully considered and appropriately considered in bringing the estimates to you for the 25-26 financial year. So then the core element really of this part of the report, Chair, is the consideration of the adequacy of the reserves. The Northern Ireland Audit Office Local Government Report recommends that councils should ensure they have clear and robust plans in place. So I set out within this section of the report the plans that we have in place and the underpinning policies. They include our financial reserves policy, the various codes of practice under which we operate, the medium-term financial plan, which we discussed a few moments ago. And I also highlight that while there cannot be any guaranteed certainty around our operating environment, I'm certainly satisfied that all reasonable considerations and risks have been considered in the context of the preparation of the medium-term financial plan and of our overall contingency planning. The minimum prudent level of reserves that the council should maintain is a matter of judgment, and there is no precise methodology for calculating the adequacy of reserves. It's the council's safety net, for unforeseen circumstances, and it must last the lifetime of the council unless contributions are made from the revenue budget. The minimum level cannot be judged merely against the current risks facing the council, but must be regularly updated as these risks can and will change over time. In my opinion, I consider, in line with previous years, that 8% of the revenue income estimated at 64 million, or 10% of the estimated total net expenditure budget, to be an appropriate level for the council's general fund reserve. You'll see then from the report, Chair, that as at the 31st of March 2024, the council's general fund reserve balance was just over 4.3 million, and it's anticipated that the level of revenue reserves will not have decreased, by the 31st of March 2025. In arriving at the recommendation of the minimum prudent level of reserves, strategic, operational and financial and economic risks have been considered, as has the robustness of the estimates information. The minimum general reserve will be kept under review, and in the event that this reserve is or is likely to be inadequate, I will report to the council on the reasons for that situation and the action, if any, which I consider appropriate to take to prevent such a situation arising. So, Chair, I therefore recommend that the minimum general reserve balance should be set at £4.5 million. This is an increase of over 100,000 on the balance as at the 31st of March 2024, and that maintains the district fund at a level equating to or higher of 8% of revenue income, or 10% of estimated total net expenditure. And just then, Chair, to formally confirm my opinion that I'm satisfied with the recommended minimum general reserve balance of 4.5 million. There is a need to maintain general contingency and resilience reserves to strengthen the mid-term financial resilience of the council, and there is also a need to consider capital reserves to provide a secure base to support the delivery of an expansive capital plan for the district over the medium to long term. So I therefore recommend that the council approves a minimum general reserve balance of £4.5 million. So that then, Chair, is the first formal recommendation in relation to the considerations tonight.
So, you've heard the recommendation from the Chief Executive that we set a minimum reserve of 4.5 million. Proposed by Councillor Coyle and seconded by Councillor McCann. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair. I was under the belief at the start of the meeting that we would take all the items. Are we just noting the recommendation, or are we approving the recommendation? I was under the impression we would be doing all at item 4, I think.
No, sorry, I'll bring the Chief Executive in here.
So you're taking just the general reserve balance, and now all subsequent items are considered at item 4.
So just for clarity, where the approval of that will be taken in item 4. This is noting, is it? Sorry. Approval. Okay. Well, Chair, at that juncture, I would like to make a proposal, Chair. A note that the general fund has not been used, as far as I'm aware, not been used in the lifetime of this council. And I feel that there is a need, given costs from national insurance rises, to consider the general fund. It's essentially a rainy day fund, and we have this unexpected cost. So I'd like to propose that the general fund reserve is set at 8% of expected net expenditure. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor McGrath.
Just want to second Adam's proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, has this been brought tonight, this proposal, via the estimates working groups? And what's the implications of it? You know, has this been something that's been brought to the officer's attention before tonight, basically?
Chief Executive.
Okay, so, Chair, no, it hasn't been brought through the estimates working group. It was alerted to me just immediately prior to the meeting. In terms of the impact, it would obviously negate the paper that I've just presented to you. So that would be the impact of that consideration.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other speakers indicating. I have a proposal to adopt the recommendation, which was proposed by Councillor Coyle and seconded by Councillor McCann. I'm assuming as we have a counter proposal, I'm assuming there's dissent, so I'm asking for a vote to be set up, please. Councillor McCann.
It's just to make the point that we've got no idea what this means in terms of figures, impacts on, on the wider financial position. We've got no idea what it means. 8% means nothing to me whatsoever. It's been sprung on us tonight. There was an opportunity weeks ago to bring this forward for it to be, thrashed out and highlighted to us. Maybe it's unfair, I think, to bring it to the council in this manner on the night we're striking the rate where we've no idea what this potentially means. I have no clue what it means, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, I've already called a vote on. Okay, so that's just a point, right? Well, we aren't in a position to reply, so we have the proposal to adopt, and it's been seconded, and that's now going to the vote. So, okay. The first one.
Also carried.
Okay, so the proposal's carried. That's give the numbers. So it's 22 for, 6 against, 4 abstentions, and 1 non-voting. So that's carried. Okay, next we go to item 4. Councillor McColgan.
Chair, it's okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Next we go to item 4, which is to strike the rate. Go to the Chief Executive.
Okay, Chair, thank you very much. So, Chair, in accordance then with Part 1 of the Local Government Finance Act and as set down in the rates regulations, the Council is required before the prescribed date of the 15th of February to set the rates. So, in terms of the recommendations, Chair, at this point then, it's really the cumulative of the reports that you have heard thus far. So, formally recommending to you that the Council approves the Council's medium-term financial plan, 25 to 2030, approves the minimum revenue provision statement, policy statement for 25-26, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, the Prudential and Treasury Indicators, and the Capital Strategy Report for the same period, authorises an affordable borrowing limit of 3.1 million for the year 25-26, approves a minimum general reserve balance for 4.5 million, adopts the estimates for 25-26 as set out in Appendix 1A and Appendix 1B of Paper A, and authorises the expenditure shown in the detailed estimate schedules, authorises the expenditure and transfer between reserves as set out in Paper A, and strikes a district rate for 25-26 for the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council as follows, and it's in the sum of 26.5309 pence non-domestic rate and 0.4382 domestic rate pence in the pound. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chief Executive. And first of all, we've got Councillor Victor Wang.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, in the current challenging economic climate, and as a local councillor and group leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, I and the party believe it is essential to minimise the financial burden on our ratepayers, whilst ensuring that council services remain sustainable. That is why, as a party, we are proposing that we set the rate tonight at 2.75%. In the past, our party has been wrongly accused of not demonstrating our position, but we will show how this can be achieved without affecting services. Included in tonight's presentation is 400,000 towards the Mawiney review of councillors' allowances. It is not yet known what these recommendations are going to be, and it certainly has not been brought before the Minister has not brought it to the floor of the Assembly yet to get it rubber stamped. And certainly what we are hearing and what a lot of people are hearing, that 400,000 which we have set is too high. There are some councils who have actually has not put any money into the coffers for it, and other ones have put in something less. We also must remember that in the 23-24 year, we had an underspent variance of 3.91 million. And this financial year, 24-25 to November, we've had a 1.96 million underspend variance. The council has also received a multi-million pound refund from HMRC recently. If the higher rate goes through tonight and in the future it transpires that we didn't need that 400,000, can I ask what will happen with the balance of that money? Our proposal is keeping the rate as close to inflation as possible. The Ulster Unionist Party wants the best possible services, but they must represent good value for our ratepayer. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sir McCann.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we move to proposal, can I also ask the same question again? Has the proposal brought forward by Councillor Warrington and the UUP, has it been advised to the Council before? And what's the implications of that in terms of the reports and impact on spending as well, Chair? And then if I just come back for another proposal, please.
So, Chair, just to confirm, at the second estimates workshop, the Ulster Unionist Party indicated that that would be their likely position this evening, and specific reference was made, as has been this evening, to the member allowances. In terms of I suppose, the implications, and I'll also answer a couple of the queries. We advised on that evening, Chair, that certainly the information that we have received, it has come from NILGA and the National Association of Councillors, so that's the basis for our estimate. I appreciate there's quite a bit of speculation in terms of the Minister's decision making, but we believe that the estimate that we have made is accurate and is certainly based on information from the relevant member bodies. In the event that the figure was removed in its entirety, it would mean that if the Minister makes any decision in relation to whatever level of enhancement to member allowances, then there would be a requirement to go into reserves to be able to fund that, and you would be starting afresh in the new financial year. In terms of the HMRC refund, which was referenced, provision has been made for that, and in accordance with our policy, that is included actually within the capital plan in terms of the financing for it. And to answer Councillor Warrington's question, in the event that the full 400,000 was not required, again in accordance with our policy, that would go into reserves. So that would be the approach.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to propose the recommendations as listed by the Chief Executive, Chair. I note that we're probably on projection to be coming in as one of the lowest councils, if not the lowest, maybe the second lowest in terms of a rate increase for the 25-26. That's in light of a very ambitious capital spend, a new capital programme brought forward by Sinn Féin, £5 million over 5 years for community capital grants. And also notwithstanding the challenges that the national insurance contributions imposed on us by the British government has had on the cost of salaries and staff. I'm aware tonight that the UUP has proposed a rate increase in Lisburn and Castlereagh of 3.99%. they're happy to bring that forward as a proposal, Chair, which is higher than what we're bringing forward tonight. Also, just to make the point that this is a combination of a process that's been done now for months. We've engaged, productively and honestly with the Alison and her team, which has took us forward to this position here tonight. So we're not going to play games. We're not going to be opportunistic or populist, propose stuff that's nonsense, really. We're here to invest in our communities, invest in our staff as well, and happy to propose the recommendations as brought forward by the Chief Executive and the team.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Jill and Catherine, Patricia, for all the hard work that they've done presenting this budget tonight. And indeed, it gives me great pleasure to second what Victor has proposed.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Coyle.
And thanks, Chair. I'll just second the Chief Executive's the whole proposals, please, and Stephen.
Yeah, if you give me a second. Okay, so we have two proposals sitting there, and the first is Councillor Warrington's and seconded by Councillor Barton's, proposing that we set the rate at 2.75, and they've shown how that can be carried out, so that's a sound motion. So Councillor Warrington has called for a recorded vote. There's no, I think we just go to the vote on it. There's no, sorry? Okay, thank you.
Just on a point of order, Chair, councillors are entitled to their time to speak on the proposal. And I'd indicated to speak on the proposals, Chair.
I've called a vote on it. I mean, there's nothing to debate.
Chair, you hadn't said we were going to vote. You noted that he called for a recording, that Councillor Warrington, sorry.
I said, so we're going to the vote?
No, you didn't.
I have called the vote. And Councillor
So
Barton.
just to clarify,
I've called the vote.
Chair, you're calling a vote and not letting
Adam,
other councillors
I am the
speak.
chair, and let me speak
Yes,
for a
I'm
second,
asking you to
please.
clarify just. Thank you, Chair.
I said, we've had a proposal by Councillor Warrington, seconded by Councillor Barton, to reduce the rate to 2.75%. And I said that is sound. And Councillor Warrington has called for a recorded vote, and that's us. We're going to a vote. So we're voting now. Sorry. I closed the vote there.
Not come up here now, you. That's way back. So with 3 from there. 20, I'm sorry, move up. Sweet room, matches. So. 2. So this 3. 5. So 5 for.
Yeah.
29 against.
Okay. Okay, so that proposal falls. We have 29 against and 5 for. So that falls. Next, we go to the proposal by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Coyle, to adopt the recommendations as per agenda item 4. Okay, thank you. So if you can set up the vote, please.
Chief decided.
Yeah. Yeah.
26 for, 7 against, 1.
Okay. So 26 for, 7 against, and 1 abstention. So that is, proposal is carried. So that's all the business concluded. Nobody has indicated for any AOB. Sorry, there's no way, there's been no AOB. So Mark, I'm not allowing anybody else in. So that's us. Meeting's concluded. Thank you very much.